අද්විතීය 200 Mbps ස්පීඩ් එකකින් ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ වේගවත්ම සහ පුළුල්තම හෝම් බ්‍රෝඩ්බෑන්ඩ් සම්බන්ධතාවය වන SLT මොබිටෙල් දේශීය ෆයිබර් බලවේගය ඔබත් අදම අත්විඳින්න.
හරිම සුළුයි.
Tonight on First at 9, this Sunday, the 28th of May 2023. Energy relief. Weekly fuel quota to be increased from next week. Cars and vans to get 40 litres a week, while buses to be entitled for 125 litres. Neighbourhood first. What India did for Sri Lanka is more than the IMF's bailout, emphasises India's S. Jaishankar. Laws delays. Sri Lanka should revisit systems on arbitration, insists human rights activist. Former Bar Association president meanwhile favours establishment of a constitutional court. Investment promotion. Foreign missions informed to collect expressions of interest from investors in setting up private zones in Sri Lanka, says State Minister of Investment Promotion. BOI aims to attract at least 50 reinvestments to the country.
Alliance Finance මෙතුරු රන්නයි සේවාවෙන් රන් පවුම්කට රුපියල් 1,70,000ක ඉහළ අධිකාරමක්.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දිනු සෙන්සුඩයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9 with Ndivadi Amuwata. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
A very warm welcome to this Sunday's edition, and we take you to your top story tonight. Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara announced an increase to the weekly fuel quota from midnight on Tuesday. As per the new announcement, cars and vans will receive a quota of 14 litres per week. Three-wheelers of general category and bikes will be entitled to a quota of 14 litres, while three-wheelers of special category will receive a quota of 22 litres weekly.
In a tweet, Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara noted that the prevailing 30-litre weekly fuel quota for cars and vans will be increased to 40 litres with effect from midnight on Tuesday. The quota for buses will be increased to 125 litres from the current allocation of 60 litres, while lorries currently entitled for a quota of 75 litres will also be granted 125 litres. Motorbikes and three-wheelers that fall under the general category will see their quota double to 14 litres. The quota for special purpose vehicles will be increased to 45 litres, while three-wheelers that fall under the special category will be entitled for 22 litres. Quadric cycles will be entitled for a weekly fuel quota of 14 litres from midnight on 30th of May.
දැන් මාසෙක හමාරකට ඉස්සෙල්ලා අපි අලුත් අවුරුදු සමයේ අපි කෝටා එක වැඩි කරා. අපි බැලුවා වැඩි කරාම විශාල පීඩනයක් තිබුණේ අපේ විදේශ සංචිතවලට. බ්‍රහස්පතින්ද තව සාකච්ඡාවක් තිබුණා. සාකච්ඡාවක් තියලා ගරු ජනාධිපතිතුමාත් අපෙන් දිගටම ඉල්ලීම් කරා මේක තව වැඩි කරන්න පුළුවන්ද කියලා බලන්න. ඒ හින්දා අපි ඊළඟ ඉන්ධන මිල සංශෝධනය සිදු කරන අවස්ථාවේ ඒ මිල සංශෝධනයෙන් පස්සේ අපි ලබන ජුනි මාසය තුල නැවත වතාවක් ඒ ඉන්ධන කෝටා එක අපි වැඩි කරන්න අපි කටයුතු කරනවා. දැන් යතුරු පැදියකට ලීටර 7යි දීලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒක 14ක් කරන්න තමයි අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ. ත්‍රි රෝද රථයට තියෙන ගාණක් 14ක් බවට පත් කරා. ඒතර අනිත් ඒවාටත් ඒහා සමානවම ඉන්ධන ප්‍රමාණය කෝටා එක වැඩි කරා. වැඩි වෙන ප්‍රමාණයන් ටික අපි නිවේදනය කරනවා මිල සංශෝධනය වෙන අවස්ථාවේ. පහුගිය මාස පහේ හැම මාසෙම ඉන්ධන මිල අපි අඩු කරා. හැබැයි මට ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා ඉන්ධන මිල අඩු කරා අනිත් බඩු වල මිල අර වැඩි කරන වේගෙට අඩු වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒක අපි දැන් බලන්න ඕනේ ඒක මොකද්ද කරන්න කියලා. ඊළඟ ආණ්ඩුව ස්ථාවර වෙනවා කියන හොඳම පණිවිඩය තමයි දෙන්නේ ජූලි මාසේ පළවෙනිදා අපි දැනටමත් යෝජනාව දීලා තියෙනවා විදුලි බල මණ්ඩලයේ පෙබරවාරි මාසේ 16 වෙනිදා කරපු සංශෝධනයේ ඒ වැඩි කරපු ප්‍රමාණයෙන් කොටසක් අඩු කරා.
Indian Minister for External Affairs Dr. S. Jaishankar says that India has done for Sri Lanka, crisis-hit Sri Lanka, is more than what the International Monetary Fund has granted to the country. Delivering a speech on Modi India, a rising power at the Anand National University in Gujarat, Dr. Jaishankar said that the Modi government is working on developing an extended neighbourhood that involves islands in the Indian Ocean, Gulf countries and nations in Southeast Asia.
The immediate stage are our neighbors. And in the last 9 years, this is one area where Prime Minister Modi personally has brought about a revolution. The perception today, the linkages and the perception today of India in the neighborhood has changed, and nothing illustrated that more dramatically than what happened to Sri Lanka last year when they went through a very deep economic crisis. And we have actually stepped forward in a way in which we ourselves have never done before. But what we have done for Sri Lanka is bigger than what the IMF has done for Sri Lanka. If any of you have visited Sri Lanka recently, I think you will note the popular perception that has accrued from this action.
Well, President Ranil Wickremesinghe returned to the island late last evening after building successful connections with the Japanese government and revisiting Sri Lanka's aim to commence mega projects that were cancelled unilaterally. While addressing the Nikkei Forum there in Tokyo, President Wickremesinghe announced Sri Lanka's new foreign policy alignment with Asia at the centre.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe arrived in Sri Lanka last evening, concluding his 4-day visit to Japan. While in Japan, the president expressed his appreciation to Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida over the support extended to Sri Lanka to overcome the economic crisis. During bilateral talks with the Japanese premier, the president expressed confidence that the island nation should be able to conclude the newly launched debt restructuring talks by September or November at the latest. Addressing the Nikkei Forum on the future of Asia in Tokyo on Thursday, the head of state mentioned that Asia has become the global economic powerhouse and the most dynamic region, with its economy already comparable in size to Europe and North America's economies. He emphasized that Asian countries do not want to be forced to choose between big powers and highlighted the economic interdependence between ASEAN countries and China and expressed opposition to the bifurcation of Asia. The president also said that he intends to apply for membership in the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Trade Bloc in a bid to boost trade and investment in the region. On the sidelines of the Nikkei Forum Future of Asia, the president also engaged in bilateral talks with Singaporean Deputy Prime Minister Lawrence Wong in Tokyo. During the meeting, President Wickremesinghe had reaffirmed Sri Lanka's commitment in implementing the Singapore Free Trade Agreement. Addressing a business roundtable titled Sri Lanka's Economic Revival and Opportunities for Japanese Enterprise, President Ranil Wickremesinghe pledged to bring in new laws on mega projects to ensure such projects cannot be halted arbitrarily by a single party or an official. The head of state also said new laws hindering the development of the island nation will be identified for removal. After concluding his visit to Japan, the president was expected to visit Singapore to hold discussions with Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong. However, the president could not visit as scheduled after the Singaporean Prime Minister tested positive for COVID. Late this evening, Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong has returned a negative result for COVID-19 and is expected to return back to work tomorrow.
Human rights activist Dr. Pratibha Mahanamahewa points out that Sri Lankan systems on arbitration should change to prevent laws delays by following the models of arbitration centres established in cities such as Kuala Lumpur and Melbourne. He made these comments while addressing a conference on laws delays in Sri Lanka organised by the Ambassadors Forum. Meanwhile, former president of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka, President's Counsel Salya Pires said he supports the establishment of a constitutional court which needs to be in parallel to the Supreme Court of Sri Lanka to address key challenges with regard to the constitution.
We are all talking law delays. What was the proactive action we had taken? Law and justice, two different things. Laws are amending, laws are changing, but justice is static. No color, nothing, no smell. So we all should work with justice. 1995 Arbitration Act, the first in Asia, but we don't implement. Where we have gone wrong. We all apply what? The lawyer's angle. Arbitration, what happening in Sri Lanka? Starting 4:30, finishing 5:30. All these are lawyers in the Supreme Court. Until they come for arbitration, the parties are waiting. We don't have a real arbitration here. And also arbitration, we have not expertise that instead of child arbitration. All retired judges are coming as arbitrators. So where is the justice sometimes? Lawyers are not good arbitrators. If you go to Melbourne Arbitration Centre, Kuala Lumpur Arbitration Centre, you go and see the list. Chartered accountants, chartered engineers and others. So the system must change. So there are systems. And also the best system, WTO, World Trade Organization, dispute settlement understanding. The dates are given. First they go with consultation and then interim report. Finally, within 6 months, the case finish. For Sri Lanka, commercial cases, business law cases, why can't we adopt that system? The system is there. Who need the law delays then?
I do think that it would be a good idea to have a constitutional court and look at key constitutional challenges. But of course, that would require amending the constitution. So whether it be on the judiciary laws delays or on the more fundamental issues of governance, I think the 17th constitution is extremely flawed. I do think we need to look at it. So on the issue of the constitutional court, personally, I think it's a good idea to have a constitutional court and to look at key constitutional issues, perhaps which should be somewhat parallel to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is inundated actually with work. It is not the fundamental rights cases which is taking time, but it is a civil appeals coming from all over the high courts. Every day there are about 5 to 7 in each court, about 5 civil appeals coming in. What we call the leave to appeal application, which was earlier, the process was district court to the court of appeal, and then only thereafter to the Supreme Court. But now, with the civil appeals going to the High Court, there are direct appeals from the High Courts to the leave to appeal application to the Supreme Court, and that is taking time. The PSC, I do think the public service rules are archaic. We need to revisit the establishment code. And the process, we have seen again, disciplinary proceedings against officers take a long time, and it's very unfair by the public officers also. And you find the state also, certainly examples how the state uses that mechanism selectively to punish people who they don't like. This needs change. And I don't think the creation of the AAT really changed the dynamics. At least AAT was a substitute. Earlier appeals could be made to Cabinet of Ministers from the PSC, and so now it is to the AAT, but the AAT doesn't have a supervisory role over the disciplinary proceedings.
The GCE ordinary level examination that was delayed last year due to the economic crisis is scheduled to commence tomorrow. According to the Department of Examinations, 472,553 candidates are expected to sit for the examination tomorrow.
The 2022 GCE Ordinary Level Examination will commence tomorrow at 3,568 examination centres across the island. 472,553 candidates are eligible to sit for the examination, which is scheduled to conclude on the 8th of June. The examination centres at schools have already been prepared to host the exams starting tomorrow.
විභාගයේ සඳහා සියලු කටයුතු සූදානම් හෙට උදේ 8:00ට විභාගය ආරම්භ වෙන්නේ. දරුවන්ගෙන් ඉල්ලා සිටිනවා විභාග මධ්‍යස්ථානට කල්ැතුව යන්න. අපි උපදෙස් දීලා තියෙනවා පැය භාගයකට පෙර විභාග මධ්‍යස්ථාන ඇතුළට ඒ අපේක්ෂකයන් අසුන් ගන්නවන්න කියලා. ප්‍රවේශ පත්‍රය නිසි පරිදි සම්පූර්ණ කරගෙන යන්නට ඕනේ. මේ අස්සන යොදලා ඒ අස්සන සහතික කරගෙන තියෙන්නට ඕන. ඊළඟට අනන්‍යතා පත්‍රය රැගෙන යා යුතුයි. ජාතික හැඳුනුම් පත්‍රය, වළංගු විදේශ ගමන් බලපත්‍රය, එහෙමත් නැත්නම් රියදුරු බලපත්‍රය මේ තුන විතරයි අපි පිළිගන්නු ලබන අනන්‍යතා පත්‍ර වෙන්නේ. දුරකථන විවිධ sannivedana උපාංග මේ දේවල් සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම තහනම්. යම් අපහසුතාවක් ඇති වුණොත් යම් කිසි විදිහකට මධ්‍යස්ථානට යන්න බැරි තත්වයක්, ගංවතුරු තත්වයක්, නායම් තත්වයක් ඇති වුණොත් ඔබටත් පුළුවන් ඍජුව අමතන්න. ආපදා කළමනාකරන මධ්‍යස්ථානයේ ශ්‍රේණික ඇමතුම් අංකය වන 117 අංකයට අමතන්න.
Meanwhile, the Director of National Dengue Control Unit, Dr. Nalin Aryaratna, stated that measures should be taken to prevent the spread of dengue at the examination centres. In the meantime, the Lanka Private Bus Owners Association said that a sufficient number of buses will operate unhindered for passenger transport in view of the GCE Ordinary Level Examination. President of the association, Gamuni Vijayaratna, requests bus drivers to prioritise students travelling in uniform to sit for the exam starting tomorrow until 8th of June.
Sri Lanka aims to invite foreign investors for the establishment of private investment zones. We'll come back with more details after this short break. To stay with us.
ගොඩමඩ පෙරලි කරන බලපුළුවන් කාරයා මහින්ද්‍රා යුවෝ ටීමෝ වෙතින් වැඩම ගොඩයි ගොඩම තමයි ස්වරාජ් ට්‍රැක්ටර් ඩීමෝ විතින්.
Taking you to business news, State Minister of Investment Promotion Dilum Amunugama says 26 islands in Kalpitia have been cleared to execute tourism-related projects in a bid to improve the tourism industry and leisure sector. Addressing a media briefing organised recently by the Board of Investment, the State Minister said BOI has also received proposals to set up automobile manufacturing and assembly plants in the country. Meanwhile, the Director General of BOI, Renuka Veerakone, said BOI aims to attract at least 50 reinvestments to Sri Lanka.
On the private zones, we have already informed our missions in other countries and also the country reps that we have appointed to bring in proposals to see whether there are investors who want to run a zone so they can manage the entire zone like Tuli area. BOI will of course be a part of it. They will have the BOI facilities, but the zone also will be managed by a private investor. And we are also looking at, we have cleared 26 islands in Kalpitia. Coast Conservation has given us the consent where we can go for on tourism and leisure, where we can go for water villas and recreational activities. And also we are looking at residential zones where there was a Saudi investor who came up with a proposal where they want to have residential zones where they can have their villas, especially in Kandy and Nuwara, and they would fly down for their holiday. So whatever, so the residential zones also will be a new concept.
What do you mean by a zone, residential zone is? How do you describe it?
Now what the request or what the project proposal was to have, now we have our manufacturing zone, to have a similar zone maybe in the areas with a cooler climate where we would give up the land but not for factories. These will be for villas, and the investor will develop the villa with his client as to what the specification is, and they will build it, and it will be given out to whoever foreign investor that the investor who builds it decides. So this is new because we have not had residential zones prior to that.
When it comes to sectors like motor assembly, vehicle manufacturing,
yeah. We have proposals for manufacturing or assembling of vehicles. We have proposals for so many things. So there is one proposal that we have received in Hambantota that will be handled by the HIPG zone, the Hambantota port zone, which is for importing used vehicles, reconditioning and exporting. Then we also have proposals for bringing in scrap vehicles and converting them into raw material or metal sheets and re-exporting. So there are so many proposals that we have received. Of course, assembling for local market also, there are proposals that we have received for electric vehicles, conversions from petrol to electric. We have received all these proposals. We are negotiating with the finance ministry whether we can go zero duty on the assembling of electric vehicles.
We are very much keen on getting reinvestments because last year we saw, other than the new ones, we saw a lot of expansions, a lot of reinvestment by our current investors. So we have a focus this year to attract another 50 from the reinvestments, for which we are trying to introduce a new package. So one of the things that we are offering is some subsidized rate on some of our zonal lands for reinvestments, as well as we have been able to, with the intervention from the Honourable Minister, we have been able to get the enhanced capital allowance extended for expansions.
President Joe Biden and his Republican opponents have announced that they have agreed in principle to raise the US debt ceiling and avert a default there. President Joe Biden described the agreement as a compromise, while House Speaker Kevin McCarthy said it was worthy of the American people. The deal, after weeks of bitter negotiations, still needs to be approved by a divided Congress. The Treasury has warned that the US will run out of money on 5th June without a deal. Now, the US must borrow money to fund the government because it spends more than it raises in taxes. Republicans have been seeking spending cuts in areas such as education and other social programs in exchange for raising the $31.4 trillion debt limit. Details of the tentative deal have not officially been released. However, CBS News has reported that non-defense government spending would be kept flat for 2 years and then rise by 1% in year 2025. Well, that wraps up tonight's edition of First at 9 on AdaDerana 24. We'll see you again tomorrow at the same time with your English news service. I'm Derana English. Good night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.